KVM, QEMU, Libvirt, if these sound abstract, that's because virtualization is all about abstraction, going from the actual CPU extensions on your CPU and your systems to how these manifest themselves as virtual CPUs in a VM that you're running on top of it. So we'll get into these terms and more in this video. So there's a bunch of terms that we use when describing Linux virtualization, but each one of them has a segment and a group of instructions that it takes care of. Let's start with KVM. KVM is the kernel-based virtual machine extension. It's added into the mainline Linux kernel and is responsible for interacting between the kernel and the hardware of the hypervisor system. So it takes care of things like working with the CPU extensions that allow virtual machines to operate. KVM is used on a ton of Linux hypervisors that do virtual machine management, from your local VMs to things like OpenShift virtualization to also stuff like your cloud provider. Most major cloud providers end up being KVM based because that's what's built into the Linux kernel. On top of KVM, we run an emulator called QEMU, sometimes pronounced QEMU. QEMU takes care of representing all of the hardware to our virtual machine systems. So when you need to add a network adapter, a serial port, an additional virtual disk drive, more CPU cores, QEMU is the one that's actually representing all of those virtual system devices to your virtual machine that you're standing up. Now you can run QEMU commands manually on the command line, but they're pretty low-level things. So instead, we've built another layer on top of that, a collection of daemons called Libvirt. And Libvirt essentially acts as an API for all of these virtual machine things that you want to do. So for example, if you wanted to add more CPUs to your virtual machine definitions, you'd use a client tool like virsh or Virt-manager or Cockpit machines to adjust how many CPU cores are on that VM. And then Libvirt will take care of actually adjusting that with QEMU, who then runs it through KVM and the physical hardware on your hypervisor. So anything that you're doing with your virtual machine, you're probably doing through Libvirt, which then makes adjustments with QEMU, which then actually plumbs through KVM. Generally, you don't care about each of these individual technologies because you're busy working with end user applications, right? Stuff like Virt-manager, which is a graphical application for creating and managing virtual machines running on top of Linux. Or maybe Cockpit Machines, which is the plugin for the Cockpit web administrative interface to allow you to define and work with virtual machines. Or maybe you like using the command line utility virsh, which is the virtual machine shell and allows you to work directly with starting, stopping, restarting, adjusting machines on the command line. So that's a little bit about these different terms: KVM, QEMU, Libvirt, and a little touch on those user-end applications that you're probably working with when you're messing around with virtual machines. Hopefully that clears up some stuff about virtualization on Linux.